Jesse, the chair is in the attendees list.
Thanks. Sorry about that. Right. All right. I think we're all here, and it's 5:31. I apologize for my tardiness. Why don't we call to order this July 7th, 2025 meeting of the Madison Plan Commission? And Director Tuttle, would you call the roll?
Alder Field.
Here.
Alder Glenn. Here. Alder Ugair.
Here.
Commissioner Heck.
Here.
Commissioner McCahill.
Here.
Commissioner Mendez.
Here.
Commissioner Sanders.
Here.
Commissioner Solheim.
Here.
Alternate Bazin.
Here.
Alternate Wisniewski. I think we saw you, but I didn't hear you. So I'll note alternate Wisniewski is here. Chair Gadam.
Here.
And we do not have school district representative Soldner.
Great. All right, thanks. As we start our meeting, we'll start with our technical information from facilitator Jesse Poole.
All right, welcome to our virtual Plan Commission meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff, members, if you're able, please activate the video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you're able, please activate your video when you're speaking. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak or ask questions. Staff, click raise hand when you're asked a question. The chair will do the best to call on committee members in the order in which your hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After all register and speak, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Our first item for tonight is agenda item 1, which is our time for public comment regarding items not on the Plan Commission agenda. Director Tuttle, do we have any registrants for public comment tonight?
We have one registrant, Reverend Michael Radowick, who is registered in support and available to answer questions. We believe, based on our communications with applicants, that the Reverend may be here to speak on item number 3, the conditional use at 2438, 2462 Atwood Avenue. If we want to just confirm that so that you know that he's available for questions on that item.
All right. All right, Reverend, are you online and maybe want to confirm? Ah, there we go.
Yes, good evening. I am here and happy to answer any questions. I believe Brad Servin from ADCI Architectural is also on with us this evening.
Great. And are your comments related to the project at St. Bernard's of Clairvaux Cathedral? Is that the?
That is correct.
Okay, great. So we will. This is kind of a general comment period, but we will. If we need to, we know that you're available to talk about item 3 on our agenda. So thank you for coming out.
Great, thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, Chair, that was our only registrant for item number 1.
Okay, great. So next is disclosures and recusals. Members of the Plan Commission should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code. Do any commissioners have disclosures or recusals related to tonight's agenda? Commissioner Wisniewski, thank you.
I need to recuse myself from items 12, 13, and 14.
Okay, thanks. Those are the zoning text amendments, and I think you'll be an alternate on tonight's agenda, so to the extent that that's needed, we'll definitely reflect your recusal on those items as well. Thanks. Anybody else? All right. Moving on, we have minutes of our June 23rd, 2025 regular meeting. Are there any additions or corrections or questions to the minutes? Seeing no raised hands, is there a motion to approve the June 23rd minutes? Alder Uguer, thank you. Is there a second? Commissioner Mendez, thank you. Any discussion on the motion to approve last meeting's minutes? All right, seeing none, we'll come to a vote. Is there any objection to unanimous approval for this item? Seeing no raised hands, we'll record those. We'll record the minutes as approved from last week. Next is confirming our schedule of upcoming meetings. Our next regular meeting is 3 weeks from tonight on Monday, July 28th. And then we have meetings on August 11th and August 25th. And those are all virtual meetings at 5:30 p.m., just like this one. Right, now we will move on to our new business, and we'll start with our consent agenda. It's the custom of the Plan Commission to remove from the agenda those items on which staff members believe an application has been sufficiently reviewed to support approval with all of the conditions placed upon it by the various city departments, and in which the applicant accepts those conditions, and there are no individuals who have registered to speak in opposition to those items. The items proposed for consent agenda for tonight are on your screen. And those are on our agenda. Those would be items 2, 3, 4, and 5, items 8 and 9, and then items 10 and 11. So of those items that are on your screen, are there any requests from the commission for separation from the consent agenda? Or are we ready to read those into the record? All right, seeing no requests for separation, we'll read the items into the consent agenda before we open and close the public hearing. So item 2 is Legistar 88855. And this is determining a public purpose and necessity and adopting transportation project plat numbers 12777-3 through 402, amendment number 2, and 12777-34.11, amendment number 1. And these are respectively in District 9 and District 11 of our Alder districts. For development-related requests recommended for approval on the consent agenda, item 3 is Legistar. Actually, I think that might not be right. Megan, I have 88555 for 2 and 3. Is there a different number for one of those? Sorry.
Yes, Chair. One of them is 88855 and the other is 88555.
I'm sorry.
They
Thank you.
look very similar.
Yes, they do. I'm sorry. So item 3 is 88555, not 88855. So 88555 relates to 2438 through 2462 Atwood Avenue in Alder District 15. And this is consideration of a conditional use in the traditional residential varied TRV1 district for a cemetery, and consideration of a conditional use in the TRV1 district for a building exceeding 10,000 square feet of area, all to allow construction of a crypt addition to St. Bernard of Clairvaux Cathedral. Then item 4 is Legistar 88557. And this is approving a certified survey map of property owned by Jacob and Jennifer Alexson and Stacy and Tyler Novogorats, located at 1626 and 1634 Baker Avenue in Alder District 19. Item 5 is Legistar 88717, creating section 28.022-00718 of the Madison General Ordinances to assign SR-C1 Suburban Residential Consistent 1 District zoning to property located at 60 White Oaks Lane in Alder District 20. Agenda item 8 is Legistar 88336, relating to 709 Northport Drive in Alder District 18. This is consideration of a conditional use in the traditional residential urban 1 TRU1 district for a multifamily dwelling with greater than 60 units to allow construction of a 4-story, 80-unit apartment building in a planned multi-use site to also contain a proposed 4-story, 24-unit apartment building in an existing place of worship. Item 9 is Legistar 88558, and this is approving a certified survey map of property owned by Northside Christian Assembly located at 709 Northport Drive in Alder District 18. Then item 10 is Legistar 88551, relating to 2222 through 2304 City View Drive in Alder District 17. This is consideration of a conditional use in the Suburban Employment SE District for dwelling units in a mixed-use building, consideration of a conditional use in the SE District for multifamily dwellings, and consideration of a conditional use in the SE District for residential buildings taller than 4 stories and 55 feet, all to allow construction of a 4-story mixed-use building containing approximately 4,600 square feet of commercial space and 60 apartments, a 4-story, 47-unit apartment building, a 5-story, 39-unit apartment building, and a 5-story, 40-unit apartment building. And then item 11 is Legistar 88568, approving a certified survey map of property owned by Investors Associated LLP located at 2222 through 2304 City View Drive in Alder District 17. All right. Having read the items for consent, I will open the public hearing and close the public hearing on those items, and we'll move to a vote. Could I ask for a motion and a second on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Oh, thanks, Alder Glenn. Is there Alder Field? Is that a second? I think you got in there ahead of Commissioner Heck. Thank you. So we've moved by Alder Glenn, seconded by Alder Field. Is there any objection to unanimous approval for the consent agenda tonight? And seeing no raised hands, the consent agenda is passed unanimously. So now we will go back to our regular agenda, and we will pick up at item 6, which is Legistar 88449, creating sections 28022-00716 and 28022 -00717 of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of portions of property located at 6004 Commercial Avenue and 604 through 902 Reiner Road from A Agricultural District to TR-P Traditional Residential Plan District and TR-U1 Traditional Residential Urban 1 District respectively, and this is in Alder District 3. And items 6 and 7 are related, so we'll also be discussing item 7, Legistar 88206, which would be approving the preliminary plat of Ryland Grove on property addressed as 6004 Commercial Avenue and 604 to 902 Reiner Road in Alder District 3. We will start with a short staff presentation. I think we have Planner Parks with us tonight to walk us through this one. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Plan Commission. Tim Parks with planning staff. Just briefly, items 6 and 7. As noted by the Chair, regard the rezoning of approximately 2/3 of a 149.7 acre parcel located along the north side of Commercial Avenue between Felon Road and Reiner Road to TRP and TRU1 for the purposes of the Ryland Grove subdivision. which will contain 488 single-family attached and detached residences and 60 townhouse units to be located on individual fee simple lots. 4 outlots for future development are proposed on the southern third of the site, including most of the Commercial Avenue frontage and approximately 1,000 feet of frontage along Reiner Road north of Commercial Avenue. The 4 outlots for future development are proposed to remain agriculturally zoned at this time and will be rezoned to other zoning districts prior to any further subdivision or issuance of zoning approvals and permits for future buildings on those outlots. The preliminary plat also includes an approximately 5.9 acre outlot for public parkland on the northern edge of the proposed subdivision, as well as a 1.1 acre privately maintained park space and a variety of outlots for stormwater management. A single-family residence and some agricultural accessory buildings located along the Reiner Road frontage of the site will be demolished to make way for the proposed subdivision, which will occur over phases extending approximately 10 to 15 years based on the application materials submitted for you. This project was previously scheduled to be before you at your June 23rd Plan Commission meeting. However, during the review of the proposed Ryland Grove subdivision, concerns were raised by the Parks Division and the Planning Division about the layout of the proposed proposed public park that would be located on the north side of F Street between H Street and the extension of Bluestone Terrace south from where it's currently platted in the adjacent Woods Farm subdivision. Staff, as noted in the June 23rd staff report, was concerned about the configuration of the park, which had single-family homes abutting the park on both the east side of H Street and the west side of Bluestone Terrace. Staff recommended that those 9 lots be eliminated so that the park could be more consistent with the park shown in the Northeast Neighborhoods Development Plan to create a more useful layout of the park with more space for future planning for recreational amenities, etc., and to eliminate any encroachments from those lots onto the public park. Following the release of those comments before the June 23rd meeting, the subdividers asked for a referral so that we could work with them to see if there might be a different layout of the park. We did do that. And the preliminary plat that's before you now has shifted the lots entirely to the east side of what would be the future park, which will now be an L-shaped parkland where the frontage on H Street will be completely free of any encroachments, as will the frontage along F Street, and also providing for park frontage south of the proposed lots, and with also a peninsula between D Street into the park for better connectivity, which if my computer was cooperating better, I would show our many viewers at home what that looks like so that they don't have to just take my word for it. And
Oh, I think we might see it, Tim. Here we go.
well, hot dog. That only took a lot longer than it was supposed to. Anyhow, this is the proposed layout of the park after the changes that were made by the applicants after working with city staff. We feel that this is a better layout for the park. And we will also note that the park space that is before you now, roughly 5.9 acres, is actually approximately an acre larger than the amount of parkland that was shown in the neighborhood development plan. So roughly some trade-offs which park staff and planning staff feel are acceptable. to accommodate the proposed lots on the east side of the park shown here along the extension of Bluestone Terrace. Bluestone Terrace has been shifted a little bit further to the east to provide 100 feet of lot depth for those proposed lots. The number of lots, however, in the subdivision is the same as what was before you on June, or scheduled to be before you on June 23rd. And that the remaining lot that was not incorporated into the park adjacency has been made up elsewhere in the blocks nearby. So the staff comments have been adjusted to reflect the proposed preliminary plat that's on screen now with its park reconfiguration. And staff is putting forward in the July 7th addendum basically a new slate of conditions for the Plan Commission should they find the standards for approval met, so that if the Plan Commission is going to move forward the preliminary plat, which is number 7, it should do so with the conditions in the July 7th addendum. Staff has reviewed the proposed preliminary plat and zoning for the subdivision and believes that it is consistent with the Northeast Neighborhood Developments Plan, as well as the Complete Green Streets Guide and the design standards in the subdivision regulation. And I'd be happy to answer questions after the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we have registrants for this item, so I will open the public hearing. And our registrants will have opportunity to speak for 3 minutes, and I'll try to interrupt briefly with a warning when we get close to the time limit. Director Tuttle.
First speaker is Brian Munson, representing Viridian Homes, registered in support.
Great. Welcome, Brian.
Again, my name is Brian Munson, principal of Vanderwall and Associates, here on behalf of Viridian Homes to talk about Viridian's next new neighborhood for the city of Madison. We're excited to be looking at this property on the growing east side of Madison, and really excited about the opportunity to bring forward a truly diverse offering of housing on this project. So as Tim gave his summary, did an excellent job. This is 548 housing opportunities for the city, spanning from single family to missing middle housing, attainable housing to age-targeted products. So really a full spectrum of housing within this neighborhood, and we're excited to bring this forward, having worked very closely with staff, as Tim mentioned, the back and forth, to come up with a revised plat layout that you see before you tonight, really reflecting the park department's input on the park layout. So we're excited to be here tonight to move this project forward. Again, something that we've been working on for quite some time with staff, and really do appreciate the back and forth we've had along the way to get here tonight, and are excited to move forward. As Tim mentioned, this is reflective of the adopted neighborhood plan. It includes the Green Street standards and meets those throughout the project, and builds upon the network of walkable streets and new neighborhoods on the east side of Madison. That's really what the Northeast neighborhood envisioned for this area. And so, as Tim mentioned, this will be built over the course of several years, roughly 10 to 15 years based on market conditions. But we're excited to take the first steps tonight, and are happy to be here to answer any questions. As always, Matt Brink with Viridian Homes and Dan Day with D'Onofrio Kotke are also here available to answer any questions that you might have. Because I'm sure, as you know, there's quite a bit of detail that goes into getting to a plat position like this tonight. And so we're happy to answer any questions you might have, but look forward to moving forward with this project and ask for your approval tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, our next speaker is Nicholas Davies from District 15, neither in support nor opposing, and wishing to speak.
Welcome.
Yeah, thanks. I value that this project will be adding housing within city limits, but I see issues with making it 100% residential and with the overly large street layouts shown. I believe the Plan Commission can cite Madison's Complete Green Streets Guide and the comp plan's general recommendations about complete walkable neighborhoods as a counterpoint to the outdated 2009 neighborhood plan. These residences are going to be quite far from anything other than other residences. The comp plan recommends commercial or mixed use at the corner of Commercial and Reiner, but that doesn't exist yet, and even that would be a long walk for much of this plat. Meanwhile, all surrounding roads are completely unimproved for pedestrian and cycle traffic, and these outer ring, lower density, low connectivity developments are challenging to provide transit service to. So what should we do then? Well, this development could include a mini downtown node. You can find examples of this in the North Star neighborhood or Fitchburg's Terra Vesta neighborhood, for example. Another technique would be to make certain lots, corner lots perhaps, a neighborhood mixed use. Then those lots could initially be built with low-medium residential structures for now, but the process to add commercial amenities later in those spots would be greatly streamlined. I think it would be a mistake to adopt this preliminary plat as is without including some walkable amenities for the future residents of it. We would be failing to ensure those residents the same quality of life that you and I enjoy today. The other area I want to touch on is the street widths. The city has made mistakes in the past. In the North Star neighborhood, for example, the city approved overly large, wide streets, and once built, those streets enabled a lot of speeding, cut-through traffic, and the city has had to devote a lot of resources to calming that traffic. This plat shows 26-foot alleys, which is enough for high-speed traffic in both directions at once. The 64 and 66-foot cross-sections show no bicycle facility, a travel lane in each direction, and a parking lane on both sides, totaling 36 feet of pavement width, which is not consistent with Madison's Complete Green Streets guidelines for neighborhood yield streets. When those parking lanes go unused, this turns into a wide open straightaway, and there's even a cross-section of over 100 feet, practically unheard of elsewhere in the city. You could almost cut that street in half and turn the other half into more buildable parcels. There's literally no good reason for devoting all of this acreage to enabling fast, reckless driving. This is our opportunity to get this right. When the final plat comes back to you, you'll be evaluating it for consistency with the initial plat, and then when Board of Public Works accepts the so-called improvements, those improvements will already be built. It might be years or decades after the site gets built before anyone comes before you with a request to rezone or redevelop a parcel within this plat. So it's important that we get this right. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Nicholas.
Okay, as Brian Munson noted, the other two registrants for these items include Dan Day and Matt Brink, both here representing Viridian Homes and registered in support. Available to answer questions.
Great. Thanks, Megan. Are there questions from any commissioners for any of our registrants? Alder Field.
Thank you, Chair. My question is for Brian or whichever among his colleagues would be best to answer. I wanted to ask a little bit about the concern that another public commenter just brought up before us about nearby mixes of uses for future residents who would live here. And you and I have talked about this a little bit. I'm wondering if you can explain or just walk through what the future plans look like for the outlots that are proposed for future development and thus not proposed to be included in rezoning in this request along the southern part of the new neighborhood.
So the 4 parcels along the corner, the northwest corner of Reiner and Commercial, are being retained by the seller of the southern 2 parcels that are part of this project. So those 4 outlots at this point are zoned agricultural and remain as outlots in anticipation of coming back through the approval process with the City of Madison to subdivide and rezone those parcels into their eventual uses. So at this point, there's not a proposal for use on those parcels. However, if you look to the Northeast Neighborhood Plan, which so much of this is based upon, the anticipated uses, thank you, Tim, the anticipated uses for that corner, you can see the purples, the darker browns, and some of the reds, imply opportunities for multifamily housing, commercial uses, and mixed use opportunities as part of the 1/4 of the envisioned town center components that are clustered around the intersection of Reiner and County Highway T and Commercial Avenue. So while those are not included in this application, we do anticipate that in the future, the property owner has that opportunity to bring forward something to develop those parcels, and would anticipate that the review would be based upon, delivering some of those uses as anticipated in the Northeast neighborhood.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Wisniewski.
Thank you, Chair. Brian, I have a question just because I think in your comments you mentioned compliance with the Complete Green Streets Guide, and our speaker had noted some discrepancies there. Can you just kind of walk me through, in your mind, how it complies with the Complete Green Streets?
Sure. So, as noted by staff, both traffic engineering and engineering have reviewed the proposed street cross sections and found them compliant with the Green Streets network. And that's really what we use as our baseline, is developing streets that respond to the adjoining context, as well as the needs for on-street parking balanced with pedestrian activity. So in the zoning application in the back portions of the document, we actually walk through exactly what all those streets would look like. From the 26-foot wide alley, which would have a 15 feet of pavement, all the way down to the 100-foot wide boulevard, which would have pairs of one travel lane in each direction at 11 feet and an 8-foot parking lane. So we work very closely with staff to make sure that meets all the standards from the street cross-section standpoint. But then we take it one step further in that we've also included in here opportunities for some additional off-street trails and paths network throughout the neighborhood, going east-west from Felon Road to Reiner Road with two distinct corridors, both the extension of Blissful as well as Divine Street extended as well, and then a north-south connection, which is anticipated to connect from the park down to the future town center components, and potentially from the park north along a corridor that's anticipated to extend through some of the undeveloped areas. So we look very closely at all the street cross sections to make sure that we're designing them to the city standards, making sure that that's reflective of both the density that's adjacent and the amount of parking that's going to happen on it, as well as creating a grid that is deflective of street movements and making sure that we have really calm, walkable streets throughout. And that's something we take very, very close attention to. And as confirmed by staff, that is something that is embedded in the Green Streets and reflected in this plan.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Thanks. Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. This is probably for Brian too. We heard and read public comment about, the lack of any non-residential space other than that big commercial or mixed use area that you've been talking about. And when you look at the plat, it does seem that there are many blocks with nothing but residential. Did you consider maybe trying to supplement the Northeast neighborhoods plan with a little bit of that, or what was your thinking?
Again, using the Northeast neighborhood as a guide, and we're understanding that one of the challenges of getting commercial to work is the combination of the need for households and exposure. And so that's a lesson we learned and applied at Grandview Commons, which is another close example just to the south along Cottage Grove Road, where you have a town center that took many years to achieve, but we were diligently working at it. I think we started that project in 1998. We might finish the last homes here this year. But to create the commercial components, you really need to be very cognizant of those two factors. And so when we saw the designations in the Northeast neighborhood, really focusing that commercial opportunity where it's going to have the greatest exposure to the region at the intersection of Reiner and Commercial, but then allowing this project to really infill the residential components to support it. It's kind of that chicken and egg, which comes first, the neighborhood or the commercial, and trying to find the right balance. What we found over time is that having the neighborhood in support of the commercial is critical to attract the retailers to serve a neighborhood. Easiest way to say is it's hard to get a coffee shop to serve a neighborhood if there's no neighborhood to serve. So when we looked at this project and this stretch of the Northeast neighborhood as really delivering that residential base in support of future commercial, that really kind of resonated both with our experience in the market as well as the guidelines of the Northeast neighborhood of really having this be that residential piece. We do look forward to further conversations and hope that the commercial pieces move forward quickly, not just on this corner of the intersection, but the fact that it spans over to 3 other properties represents opportunities for commercial to come in the near term as this area of the city continues to grow. But we do really reflect the adopted neighborhood plan on this parcel. And so that's what led to the residential designation of these properties.
Thanks, Brian. I may ask a staff a question about that too, but thanks for your input.
Yep.
Thanks. Alder Gareth.
Thank you, Chair. And I believe this would also be a question for Brian Munson. The staff report notes that there are significant stormwater limitations with regard to discharge rates, and I believe they're looking for a plan that even in a 200-year event that discharge would have to be within the capacity of the existing culverts. Could you talk a little bit about how the plat looks at methods for dealing with this stormwater?
Yeah, so we've been working very closely with staff, and Dan Day will be able to chime in here in just a second. I'll kind of give a more generalized overview, but he can answer any of the technical questions you might have. But we've been working closely with staff because in this area of the city, there are some existing constraints off-site that we have to make sure we are designing to move the water through the appropriate channels, both from a volume and a discharge rate. We will be working to meet all the standards that are necessary and believe in conversation with staff that we have a solution that will move the water from the area where there's a constraint downstream through either the combination of downstream easements or within the right-of-way of Commercial Avenue. And so we're continuing to work with staff on that, but we do work closely with them to make sure that we're meeting all of the standards. And if you have any detailed technical questions, I think Dan Day would probably be better served to answer those.
Dan, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? I don't need a real technical explanation.
No, this is Dan Day from D'Onofrio Kotke. Good evening. And Brian explained it very well. There's a large area that drains to basically to the intersection of Felland and T that we are having to deal with because it does not have a very good outlet at this point in time. So we've done quite a bit of modeling of that corner and how we're dealing with it. And we have a solution in hand that we've worked with the stormwater staff at the engineering department to come up with a solution that we think we can design and implement.
Will you be able to capture most of it for infiltration on the site, or are you going to have to rely heavily on some easements for a different flow?
Actually, we're going to do quite a bit with infiltration, but we will be requiring some easements to navigate some of the water. Also, I think the infiltration here is quite extensive compared to quote unquote normal circumstances. But yeah, I think it's a combination of both is what it boils down to.
Thank you. That's responsive. No further questions.
Thanks, Alder Garrett. Commissioner Wisniewski.
Thank you, Chair. Brian, I'm going to go back to you with just this commercial question because when Commissioner Heckett asked this question, it prompted something in my mind. I was just listening to a conversation with the developer of the cul-de-sac development out of Tempe, Arizona, and he was talking about their realization of the idea of micro-commercial outside of the traditional sizes of commercial store spaces that can be easily incorporated into neighborhoods. Is that something, just, again, looking at the size and the age-related things, I'm thinking of older adults and being able to walk, easily when they're no longer able to drive. Is that something that your planning team even looked at in looking at this?
In terms of the commercial uses, again, just to kind of give a point of scale, the entire neighborhood is almost a quarter mile walkable distance from the pocket park, so the main park in the middle. So just to give a point of reference, we're talking a matter of a 3-4 block walk at the most to span through this neighborhood. So from a walking shed standpoint, the ability to move about the neighborhood and get to the commercial uses that are anticipated in the future is certainly there. We've looked at other examples, and I'm very familiar with the cul-de-sac project, which benefits greatly from the ability to have the transit station right there at the front door. Unfortunately, we don't have that at this point to really help induce some of the commercial market that would support smaller scale commercial. We have looked at that in other neighborhoods, and it's always been a challenge to find both the right balance between number of households to support a walking neighborhood, commercial use that's really focused on serving the neighborhood, but also having enough market around it and not having an anchor such as a grocery store, a library, or some other kind of civic destination use makes it very difficult to make those kind of investments work and attract the kind of users that would survive the build out. Now, over time, as this town center gets implemented, we do anticipate that a lot of those uses are going to be very walkable, very close. That's why we've designed the sidewalks on every street and bike paths connecting down to the town center so that we do have modes and opportunities for folks to walk through the neighborhood down to those destinations. And quite honestly, Grandview Commons is another good example of that in motion. It took probably about 15 years for the commercial to truly become realized in that project. And it wasn't until the grocery store came forward that the greater commercial shed was able to be implemented. But at this point, the challenges of implementing standalone micro commercial, absent transit, a major destination, or other supported retail is very difficult to achieve in the market. It's something we'll continue to look at and see if there are opportunities. But in this case, again, going back to the Northeast neighborhoods, really kind of focusing that commercial around the town center there at Reiner and Commercial in the future. We kind of leaned into that as satisfying the residential component and looking to the commercial in the adjoining properties.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thanks. Great. Any other questions for our registrants? And if not, I will close the public hearing and ask if the commissioners have questions for staff. All right. Commissioner Heck, thank you.
Thank you. I guess I'll just follow through and ask Tim Parks about, I guess it's primarily the age of the neighborhood plan. It's not a new one, and that maybe some aspects of the design could possibly be a little bit outdated. Certainly we have much older guiding plans in the city still. But when thinking about very small commercial nodes, is it possible that to justify requiring something like that in this venue when it's not part of the neighborhood plan?
Well, I'll try to capture your question in a succinct answer, so bear with me. Northeast Neighborhoods Development Plan is actually still relatively contemporary in staff's estimation, from the perspective that when the comprehensive plan was updated in 2018 and then further updated again in 2023, we basically roll a lot of the land use recommendations from the neighborhood development plan into the comprehensive plan. And where we have older plan recommendations, that has not necessarily been the case. We might use the comp plan updates to maybe make a more contemporary recommendation for a site because we're concerned about the age of the plan. But I would say that the Northeast Neighborhood Plan was kind of a pioneering document in that it really tried to, not the first neighborhood development plan that we did that did so, but really tried to, look at creating more cohesive neighborhoods with more walkable, denser nodes like the one that's recommended for the Reiner commercial intersection. And so I think the thing that we know tonight is that all of the mixed use and higher density housing that is recommended in that plan and also in the comprehensive plan is not before you tonight, but will be eventually. And that to the speaker's comments about where the proposed residential is in relation to the rest of the city and to the rest of this planning area, we only have one other development that's actually gone forward in the Northeast Neighborhoods Plan area in over 15 years of it being in effect, and that's the nearby Jana Village subdivision. We did have a subdivision approved across Reiner Road from this site back in 2019, but that did not move forward. It is zoned for future uses, but the project just didn't move ahead. I think it was a victim of the COVID pandemic and, the fact that it was at that time a relatively newly developing area. So this project will be only the second project to move forward, presuming that they are approved tonight and at the council next week, and when a final plat comes forward and is ultimately recorded, there's going to be rooftops out here without a lot to serve them initially. That's good, bad, or indifferent, not uncommon with a lot of developments. Mr. Munson mentioned it in relationship to Grandview Commons, about a mile or so south of here, which was a traditional neighborhood that started over 25 years ago. We're seeing it at Midtown Commons, which was sort of a west side version of Grandview Commons to a degree. Not to make it a comparison, but we still have not seen much commercial of consequence at Midtown Commons, despite a few hundred housing units having been built just within that development, to say nothing for the other developments that have developed around it over the last 25 years. So the commercial usually comes last. We anticipate that when the property owner for these 4 outlots for future development comes forward, that the Plan Commission will have an opportunity to review their proposed zoning and any further division of those 4 outlots for further development to make sure that they are as consistent with the Northeast plan as possible. And then hopefully we will see soon thereafter the development of those parcels with even further consistency with the adopted plan in terms of the density of development and the orientation, because, something that's unique in Northeast that I would say we even struggled a little bit to get at Grandview Commons is to get that mixed use and higher density development oriented to the major street. That's probably a point of departure between those plans. We would really like to see buildings at the corner of Commercial and Reiner, not necessarily backing up to it, but trying to create a real true node at that intersection to the extent possible. So things that we would like to see today, but for myriad reasons we don't. The residential that's before you, we feel, is consistent with the adopted neighborhood development plan, but recognizing that we have that additional development land to the south of those lots, which is a big blank that we'll need to fill in the coming years.
Thanks. You may have a comment about this, but I kind of am interpreting this as even things like micro commercial are things that may take many years to develop, and certainly zoning doesn't quite accommodate that right now. In at least in what I'm thinking of a little store or not just a coffee shop, but I think that's probably a bigger zoning discussion about allowing small commercial uses in residential districts in the future, rather than something I think we can conquer right now, is my thought. And I would love to have that conversation in the future, but it's kind of difficult to shoehorn it into this particular approval, I suppose.
I think it is. First of all, we do have a couple of zoning classifications that might possibly accomplish a quote unquote micro commercial project. That would be the limited mixed use district and possibly the neighborhood mixed use district, although that might be a little bigger, ironically, than what we're talking about here. Limited mixed use, however, has been used on a, pardon the phrasing, limited basis because it is very limiting in terms of the uses allowed and how you can execute development in that district. But it was intended for small mixed-use buildings that might be within a neighborhood that, I think the intention would be that if someone came forward and said, I want to take lot X of Ryland Grove and zone it for limited mixed use for permitted use in the district, I think the basis of LMX is intended to allow that without the site having to be, shown in a neighborhood development plan for, neighborhood commercial or neighborhood mixed use. But it's a very, very small box in which LMX allows someone to propose something. And that was done for a reason, because maybe historically, right or wrong, we have looked at commercial uses in residential neighborhoods with some skepticism bordering on concern. So I think it would depend on where and what and how much as to whether or not it would be supportable. But that is certainly something that I think, could be a topic of consideration in the future.
Okay, thanks. And then, sorry, one unrelated question. I think I'm seeing there are no bike lanes necessarily on these streets. Is that correct? We heard about the bike paths potentially.
Right. So tonight we're approving whether or not the rights of way shown on the preliminary plat are consistent with the street layout in the neighborhood development plan and consistent with the complete green streets guide. And that's where the traffic engineering division and city engineering division in particular, with some input from myself and from planning, on whether the proposed streets will meet the different typologies in complete green streets. But we're not approving what will go within those streets tonight. So that will be a topic of further discussion, primarily between city engineering, traffic engineering, the Transportation Commission, and the Board of Public Works, who are involved in the development, review, and approval of the actual cross sections within those rights of way. So again, we're just looking at the boundaries within which the proposed streets will be built in the future.
Okay, thanks. That helps. I guess the widths will dictate some of the future considerations, but so there must be ideas unspoken about what could be what. But that makes sense. I appreciate that.
Okay, and again, I would point the Plan Commission to the plans that were provided for informational purposes by the development team that have been vetted by city engineers, which show what type of streets or which streets will be which type in the complete green streets guide, and showing what those cross sections could look like. That's in the attachment Ryland Grove plans. And so
That's where I saw no bike lanes.
well, it will depend on the different street types and the design that traffic engineering and city engineering come up with. But yeah, I think there's definitely more that will get fleshed out once the preliminary plat moves forward, a final plat is submitted, and the engineers start, hammering out what those streets will look like.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Other questions for staff? All right. Are we ready to move to a motion on, I think we need to take them in order or separately. So we'll start with item 6, which is the zoning questions. Alder Uyghur, thank you. Oh, you're still muted.
Let
There
me
you
just switch around here so I can get my wording correctly here. All right, with regard to the zoning, finding that the standards are met, I move that we forward zoning map amendment ID 28.022 to 00716, rezoning specific portions of the site from A to TRP. And likewise, zoning map ID 28.022-00717, rezoning specific portions of the site from A to TRU1, that we approve and recommend approval to the Common Council.
Thank you. Alderfield, is that a second? Thank you. All right. Any discussion on the motion? Alderfield.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly on the question of commercial uses and the spatial orientation of such. This is something that I've been thinking about since I learned of the proposal, because I certainly agree that we want neighbors to be moving in with walkable amenities within or accessible from their neighborhood. And that is actually one of what I consider to be drawbacks of where we live. We live in a primarily residential only area of the city, and I'm eager for the area plans to come through and help us rethink what future land uses are allowable, accessible to our otherwise entirely residential neighborhoods. I'm also sensitive to the comments that the applicant made about the fact that it is hard to get commercial off the ground, so to speak, until areas do fill out with more residents and more families. I'm represent the area that is Grandview Commons and a bit surrounding, and I'm aware of 2 storefronts, areas with mixed use recommendations that are still vacant all these years later, and neighbors are still wondering what's going to go in there. And that, I understand, will happen as more prospective customers and diners and shoppers move into the neighborhoods. And so I understand the logic of the sequencing behind the land uses that the applicants and property owners are proposing here. I'm certainly very eager to see what they come up with, though, for that corner of Reiner and Commercial, because that will be a very prominent feature of the east side and the growing part of the east side in my district. But generally, I agree with the motion and the findings that this subdivision plat is consistent with recommendations from the area plan, the neighborhood development plan, in the portions that it covers. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Alderfield. Other discussion? Seeing none, we'll call it to a vote. Is there any objection to unanimous approval for item 6? All right, seeing none, we'll record that as unanimously passed and move to item 7, which is the preliminary plat. I'd be looking for a motion and a second on that item. Commissioner Solheim, thank you.
I'll move that the Plan Commission find the standards met and forward the revised preliminary plat of Ryland Grove to council with a recommendation of approval, subject to the conditions in the amended staff report dated July 7th.
Thank you. Alder Glenn, was that a second? Thank you. Discussion on item 7. All right, we'll call that to a vote. Is there any objection to unanimous approval for the motion on the preliminary plat? And seeing none, we'll record that as also unanimously passed. So thanks for the good discussion, and thanks for the registrants for their assistance as well on this one. That will take us to items 12, 13, and 14 on our agenda. These are 3 proposed zoning text amendments. And the way we'll go through these is we'll have one staff presentation to cover all 3 items and have the public hearing and discussion on those to the extent they're registrants. And then we'll vote on them separately as is our normal practice. So I think we have Director Tuttle and her colleagues will walk us through this. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll give a presentation, as the Chair said, with an overview for all 3 of the zoning text amendments that we're going to talk about tonight. And then we will move forward from there. I want to note that Katie Bannon, who is the city's zoning administrator, is also here tonight. The work that we're going to talk about this evening is coming from, oh, give me one second. Are you seeing my presenter screen or?
No, we can, it's like the projection screen where the next slide shows off to the right.
How does this look?
That's better. That's
okay.
A slide at a time. There we go.
Great. So Katie Bannon and the team in the zoning division have been working closely with the planning team to bring forward these specific proposals that we'll talk about tonight. And I'll also note that Deputy Mayor Christy Baumel is here in case there are any questions about the Housing Forward initiative or the broader policies that are included within Housing Forward or kind of behind the package of zoning amendments that we're talking about tonight. Within the Housing Forward initiative, there are a number of goals and action items that were outlined to help address the city's overall housing targets. The zoning changes that we're talking about tonight all relate to different action items under the primary goal to increase housing choice. These relate to things that will help support more small-scale missing middle housing, more opportunities for lot division to create places for new homes to be created, and to help simplify some of our standards for infill zoning, in this case, within the downtown core itself. So I'll briefly walk through each of these to explain a little bit more about that. The first ordinance would allow duplexes and twin homes in all residential zoning districts in the city. Specifically, what this ordinance does is enables these housing options in the 6 zoning districts where these have not generally been allowed in the past. I say generally allowed because in 2023, the city adopted the Transit-Oriented Development Overlay District that did allow for 2 units in some of these zoning districts where they were in close proximity to the high-frequency bus routes in the city. But this change would expand upon that and make this an allowable housing type in all residential zoning districts in the city. This is really one of the policies that's intended to support more small-scale housing choices within neighborhoods over the long term. This map shows a little bit more graphically what I was just describing in terms of the areas of the city that would be impacted by this change. The areas in orange are those zoning districts that either allowed 2-unit buildings already or were within the transit-oriented overlay district boundaries where 2-unit buildings became permissible a couple of years ago. The areas in yellow represent the approximately other 2/3 of the land that's in our residential zoning districts where 2-unit buildings would become allowed if this ordinance is adopted. I will note here, and you might have seen in some of your public comment, that this does not include residential neighborhoods that may have been developed under a planned development zoning. That is a site-specific or development-specific zoning tool that was frequently used, generally more historically in the city. And because of the specific nuances of each of those neighborhoods' zoning districts, this will not apply and will not affect those districts, but will apply to all of the residential areas that are in conventional residential zoning districts, as we call them, those 15 other districts that we have. This also builds on a zoning change that you may remember from earlier this year. We introduced a number of text changes that you saw, one of which provided more flexibility for where a second unit could be located within a building. Our zoning code previously limited the placement of those 2 units to a sort of traditional side-by-side or over-under kind of scenario. And we adopted as a city an ordinance that provided more flexibility for how those 2 units could be placed within a building, particularly to allow more flexibility for internal conversions or additions to homes that didn't meet those specific configurations. So this builds on that as well, not by changing those kind of interior details, but instead by allowing those 2 units in more places within the city. We would expect this to be implemented incrementally over time as individual property owners make choices about adding a unit to their home or converting the home that's on their property. The next ordinance is to allow more backyard lots. For plan commissioners that have been on the commission for some time, you may have heard this referred to as a deep residential lot, as they're called in our zoning in the MGO. You may have also heard these more colloquially called flag lots, which you can see in the diagram shaded in blue. The shape of the resulting lot kind of resembles a flag on a flagpole. So this proposed change would make it easier to divide large lots to create a backyard lot. This one ultimately is about creating more housing choices over time in existing neighborhoods. And specifically, when we hear a lot of interest in new home ownership opportunities, is about creating lots where new homes can be built, which can be a tool to help us achieve more home ownership opportunities in the future. This diagram provides a quick graphic example of how a lot division of this type might occur. And one thing that I just want to note here is that this is different from an accessory dwelling unit, as you see a sort of rear backyard building in the bottom example, in that the land under the building itself can be owned individually or separately from the primary home that the lot was divided from. In the case of an accessory dwelling unit, we do allow freestanding rear buildings. However, that building has to be on the same lot as the primary home. We have seen some examples, though few examples, under our existing deep residential lot standards. This is an example of a deep residential lot that was approved nearly 20 years ago, where the division created a new lot in front of an existing home. So you can see here at the top of the screen was the large existing lot, a new lot was created in the front, and a new home was created in front of the existing. This is another example of a deep residential lot. This is a nearly 2-acre lot that the Plan Commission approved this rear lot division for earlier, actually I think it was in the fall of last year. And while we have not yet seen a new building constructed on this lot, it could be a place for a new home to be constructed. But the common example for these lots is that they're very large. Those are 1 and 2 acre lots respectively. The standards that we've had in place have made it somewhat challenging to find lots that are eligible for division. So this ordinance proposes several changes to the dimensions that are required for a backyard lot to be considered. The first is the width of the pole of the flagpole where it meets the street and serves the driveway. Today, that width of that flagpole is required to be 30 feet minimum. This ordinance reduces that to a 10-foot minimum, which is a width that can accommodate the minimum width of a residential driveway to serve the rear lot. This also standardizes and reduces the minimum lot depth for both the existing and well, I should say for both of the resulting lots in a backyard lot division. Currently, our ordinances either require these lots to be 100 feet deep or 80 feet deep, depending on which zoning district that it's in. The ordinance that you're looking at recommends standardizing the minimum lot depth to 75 feet per lot. And finally, as part of this package, the Housing Policy Committee actually recommended this change to you about reducing the minimum lot depth to 75 feet. When this was originally introduced, the minimum lot depth was recommended at 80 feet. As we dug into what a minimum lot depth of 75 feet could mean, we recognized that there was a need to consider an alternative front yard setback for the newly created backyard lot to ensure that the resulting setbacks that would apply to those new lots could still enable a reasonably sized building footprint for that rear lot. So this proposes a standard 15-foot minimum setback for the backyard lot, rather than the 15 to 30-foot minimum that might be required otherwise of the zoning district in which the lot is located. The final change that I'll recommend, or I'll note is recommended as part of this ordinance, is to remove the lot divisions, to change the process for these lot divisions to rely on our processes for CSMs rather than to require all of them to be reviewed as a conditional use by the Plan Commission. So they'd be reviewed administratively except for under the standards of the CSM and the guidance that the Plan Commission would look at for a CSM. In resulting lot divisions, it's worth noting that other zoning standards will continue to apply, particularly things like lot size. We already talked about other setbacks, side and rear setbacks. For example, each lot would need to meet the minimum lot area and would need to be able to accommodate all of the other zoning standards or other building code requirements that would be applicable to the lot. When we look at where this would apply in the city, we've identified that approximately 7% of the residential lots in the city could meet the basic size requirements for a lot division under these proposed changes. This is about double what we expect, double the number of lots that we would expect could meet the minimum requirements today. But again, we'll note that this is expected to be an incremental housing solution, adding choices into individual neighborhoods over time as individual property owners consider whether their lot meets both the minimum requirements as well as meets all of the requirements related to building placement and other features on a lot in order to pursue division. And finally, our last proposed change here is to simplify the process for review of small and medium-sized downtown development proposals. Specifically, this raises the threshold for conditional use review within 4 of the downtown zoning districts to make more permitted uses within those districts possible. I think the Plan Commission knows pretty well the differences between a permitted and a conditional use, but want to just note here that even under a permitted use scenario, the city applies a robust set of development review processes and ordinances to developments that come through, even when there's not review by the Plan Commission. And specifically, when we're talking about the downtown zoning districts, we have some specific standards within the zoning districts that apply in addition to those that apply in other parts of the city. For example, we have design review standards that apply in the downtown zoning districts. We also have specific height limits that are mapped within the downtown zoning districts. We also have, in some cases, processes for Landmarks Commission and Urban Design Commission to continue to review projects, even if they are not conditional uses that would be reviewed by the Plan Commission. This is a simplified map of the downtown zoning districts, and we're going to talk about just 4 of them tonight because those are the areas that this code applies to. But want to note here as well that we have a number of blocks within the downtown area that developed over time under planned development zoning, so site-specific zoning districts. And the changes that we're talking about tonight will not affect those individual site-specific standards for those parcels. It will apply to developments within the DC, UMX, DR1, and DR2 districts. So the first change is for the DC and UMX zones. Today, the threshold for when a project is reviewed as a conditional use is either 4 stories or 20,000 square feet. In some cases, it may also include any project that is more than 8 units. The proposal is to increase that threshold to projects that are over 6 stories. The one exception to this proposed change is for developments that directly front on State Street or the 100 block of King Street. This is because we know that there's great interest in how properties on those corridors develop. So we want to retain that lower threshold to make sure we provide a closer level of review. And know that our downtown plan process is coming up soon that will help us to explore what development outcomes we think might be appropriate within these areas. For reference, this is a couple different examples of what a 20,000 square foot and 4-story building might look like. So again, this is our current max size and height that could be permitted as reviewed as a permitted use, I should say, under our current zoning for these 2 districts. This example, 520 East Wash, is a real world example of kind of range of building that we're talking about. This is one example of a building that has been built in recent years on the 300 block of East Wilson that could become a permitted use under these proposed changes. And this is another example at on North Webster Street that is a slightly larger building, but is another example of a building that could become a permitted use. To zoom out and just share what this means in context of other parts of the city, these are some details about conditional use thresholds for projects outside of downtown. These are not proposed to be changed by this ordinance, just to be clear, but sharing this information for reference. In our comprehensive plan, we identify a number of growth priority areas. And in some cases, we have done the work to change our zoning standards, whether that's the map zoning districts or other details to help with implementation of those growth priorities. In the case of places like East and West Town Mall, for example, it's possible that a development of up to 8 stories could be reviewed as a permitted use, depending on the project specifics. You can see some other examples of what the thresholds might look like around other parts of the city. So ultimately, by focusing the conditional use standards more on projects of more than 6 stories, we're focusing less on the square footage or number of units in a building in the downtown districts, which is one of our major growth priority areas in the comp plan, and trying to be a little bit more consistent with how we've aligned those processes in other areas of the city. We have reviewed the developments that have come before the Plan Commission over the last decade relative to these proposed changes, and think that if development in the future were to roughly mirror the size and scale of developments that we've seen over the last decade, probably about a quarter of the projects that we are to see would be become a permitted use under this proposed change. So projects like the ones that you see here on the screen that are much larger would continue to be a conditional use. Within the DR1 district, we are proposing the threshold change from projects of more than 4 units to projects of more than 12 units. The purpose of this change is to enable more of the upper end of the missing middle housing spectrum by right than what our ordinance would allow today, and align the DR1 district to be more closely related to other medium residential districts in the city. And then for the DR2 district, which you see applies here along Langdon Street and the sort of southwest area, West Mifflin, West Wash, West Main Street, is proposed to change from projects greater than 8 units to projects greater than 36 units that would become a conditional use. And again, this aligns more closely with other high density areas of the city. So I'll wrap up here by saying that we're talking about these ordinances tonight. We have discussed them with the Housing Policy Committee a couple of weeks ago, who, in addition to recommending the change to the backyard lot ordinance that I mentioned earlier, recommended your approval of these policies. And we discussed them at a community meeting last week. So after your review and recommendation this evening, they are anticipated to go to the Common Council for their consideration of approval next Tuesday at their meeting. So I'll wrap up there and happy to answer questions when we get to that part.
Thanks, Megan. We do have registrants, so we'll open the public hearing. I'm not sure if we have registrants wishing to speak, but I'll ask you to walk us through that, Megan.
Okay, and Chair, just one quick note is that we will want to do the hearings individually for each one.
Oh, so, thank you. Yep. Yeah. Let me pause and go back. I neglected to read the Legistar items, but I will do that now that we've had our overview. We'll take up first item 12, which is Legistar 88735. Amending sections 28.135 and 16.23 paren 6 paren D of the Madison General Ordinances related to deep residential lots to facilitate easier development. So we'll, with that item and having heard our staff presentation, we'll open the public hearing for item 12 and welcome any registrants on that.
Okay. We do have one speaker on this item, Will Frederick, who is from District 2, registered in support and wishing to speak.
All right.
Chair, there's no person by that name in attendance.
Yep, I do see that. All right. Well, I don't know, Jesse, if you've been watching that for some time. I don't know if he was here and left, or maybe he didn't understand what he was doing when he said he was wishing to speak, but
yeah, I have not seen that person in attendance tonight.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Well, then I will just move on and note that we also had registrants Cheng Wu, registered in support, available to answer questions, from District 9, Blake Wasong from District 19, registered in support, available to answer questions, and 12 other registrants, all who registered in support, not wishing to speak, who will be part of the record after the meeting.
Great. So so we do have folks who are available to answer questions. If commissioners have any questions for our registrants, I will note that that there's the registrants reflected a lot of support for the item. So seeing none, I will close the public hearing on item 12 and ask if the commissioners have questions for staff on this item. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. Quick question. Megan, you mentioned the CSM process for splitting the lot. So is that administrative, or does it still come before the Plan Commission? Because we usually see CSMs.
Yeah, I think a number of CSMs will still come before the Plan Commission. I think the difference that I alluded to is that, and Tim, feel free to jump in here if you'd like. The difference that I alluded to is that we'll review them under the CSM standards in MGO 16 rather than under our conditional use standards in the zoning code.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thanks, Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. I'm not sure who will want to answer this, but I'm thinking about the proposed changes to thresholds in the downtown area. And as I think back on past projects, I realize that many of those are apt to be adjacent to local landmarks in local historic districts, et cetera. And if a project is not going to come to Plan Commission because it's become a permitted use by virtue of these new height thresholds. Does Plan Commission still have a role in consideration of projects in local historic districts, for instance?
I think in those cases, the Landmarks Commission is able to approve a project within those local historic districts. So I don't believe the Plan Commission would have a direct role in approving those, but the Landmarks Commission would continue to do their work to review adjacency and to make any approvals needed for those projects.
Yeah, I'm thinking about situations in the past where Plan Commission did weigh in based on some, items in the historic preservation plan or ordinances because of the way the standards of approval are written. I guess it gives me. It doesn't concern me that much, but I can imagine that it will give some pause if they realize that.
Like an example I can think of recently, I'll note, was larger development in the 600 block of West Mifflin? Where you did receive some comments from the Landmarks Commission and the UDC about how to treat the corner of a building that was adjacent to a local landmark. And it was ultimately up to the Plan Commission to weigh in on which approach to take to address that adjacency. That project is a candidate that would continue to be a conditional use under this proposed change. What we found, I don't know if this is helpful to the point of your question, Commissioner Heck, but what we found is that there was a pretty big difference in terms of the overall size of projects that kind of fell under this 6-story proposed threshold and over this 6-story proposed threshold. In many cases, the projects that were under this size were under 100 units. They were under, 80 or 90,000 square feet of total area. And if they were over 6 stories, 7 stories, they were far in excess. They were several hundred units. They were hundreds of thousands of square feet. So we're talking about very different scales of buildings. And in the case of that project that was, I think it was on West Mifflin. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the exact address. That's an example of a project that would continue to fall under the conditional use criteria and would continue to come to the Plan Commission after landmarks review. But in the case of permitted projects, those smaller projects, they would have the ability to approve projects under the standards that are in the Chapter 41 that deal with adjacency to landmarks.
Okay. I guess, a fair number of things seems like they're empowering landmarks a little more than they used to be in some ways, and I'll think about that. Thank you.
Thanks. Alder Uyghur.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is probably a question for Katie Bannon. Perhaps the most frequent question I'm getting from residents interested in these, particularly with regard to 12 and 13, is the interaction of these proposals and existing covenants that may be on the property. And I wonder if you could just, for the record, speak a little bit about what we do, or let's say we have, as an example, someone who would like to split their lot, but they have a covenant that is part of that neighborhood that requires certain size limitations and so forth that may make it awkward. Could you just mention to us how that interaction will work and what the city would do if it received an application to split a lot where there was a covenant in place?
And that is a good question that we've had a number of times. So with those covenants, those are a private agreement that the city is not a party to. So it's not something we're necessarily even always aware of. It's not something we enforce. It's not something we look at before we do an approval. However, that that private property owner may be aware that those covenants are in place, and there could be an action taken privately to try to enforce those covenants outside of any city process. So that can be an obstacle in some cases, but it's not something the city really, has any control over ultimately.
And the point, Katie, is then that the city is not going to enforce that covenant.
Correct.
Would not be a party to a legal action by a neighborhood association or one or more neighbors who would seek to enforce it. The city is just not a party to that action if it takes place.
Correct.
Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oops. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on Commissioner Heck's good questions. So if this were to move forward and a building came forward that was within the 6-story, limitation and was therefore a permitted use, but was adjacent to a landmark or within a historic district, therefore going before landmarks, and, in reviewing that, landmarks determined, for example, that, 5 units should come off the back of the building due to a transition to the landmark or something like that. But it was also a permitted use. In other situations that would then come to us, and Plan Commission would kind of make a determination of the standards and what's consistent with the plan and kind of make the call on that. But if it didn't come to us, what would happen there? It seems like it could be a little bit of an impasse.
So
and maybe that's moot because there's other projects that are currently permitted uses where that same exact thing could happen. I'm just now thinking about it as we change it from potentially to 6.
Right. I think that was part of what I was going to say. I think it's a fair question because the standards for the thresholds for what is a conditional use within the downtown core and UMX district are pretty low in terms of their the scale of developments that we see within these parts of the city. I was going to see if Katie or Tim had any perspective on this, just from being involved in the development review space for longer. If they can think of any examples where we've seen recommendations from landmarks that would have impacted, for example, if a project as a permitted use was made smaller by any of the recommendations from a landmarks commission review of adjacency to a landmark.
Tim's probably going to have a lot more on that with his history. But I did just want to clarify that, landmarks would not become the deciding body on this if it's a permitted use. They would be providing an advisory information to the Urban Design Commission, which would still continue to review all these downtown projects as they do today. So there would still be kind of that opportunity through the Urban Design Commission to make a determination of what to approve based on that advisory information from Landmarks Commission.
Thank you, Katie. That's important, and advisory to staff ultimately for approval, using the standards that are in the ordinance itself as well. Tim, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Sorry, no, I do not.
I do want to, I just want to pause for a second because the issue that we're talking about with 6-story projects is really item 14 and we were still working on item 12. So I think the conversation is good and I don't want to disrupt that, but at some point we do have to pause and go back to item 12. But I suspect that Commissioner Heck has a comment about item 14 and I will let him make it. So.
Thank you. I do indeed. And I guess because we had the presentation on all 3, I got lost.
Yeah, that's okay. I probably should have caught you, and I'm like, sorry.
So I just want to make sure I understand what Katie was saying and what Megan were saying. In some of these situations, we're talking about the Landmarks Commission currently, I think, makes a finding and is advisory to Plan Commission, and Urban Design Commission is often advisory to Plan Commission. And so I guess it's sometimes they're actually making a decision and it's not just advisory, and that will go to staff who will make a determination that it fits the parameters of a permitted use being approved. Is that more or less correct?
Katie, is that your understanding of what you were sharing?
Yeah, I mean, it's my understanding that because these will all still go to Urban Design Commission, that landmarks will be advisory to the Urban Design Commission decision. You know, as staff are really looking at what does the ordinance say, yes or no, is this allowed or not? It's a little bit less of that kind of that more squishy discretionary things that boards and commissions are tasked to make determinations on. So it'd really be through that Urban Design Commission path for the landmark, for adjacency to a landmark, that decision would be made. As far as the local historic districts, same process as today, where the Landmarks Commission does make a decision about historic preservation standards and whether those are met with a development.
Yeah, so
that would be required.
Separate kind of things, yeah. Right? Yeah, and so it's the latter part of what Katie. I mean, yeah, it's the latter part of what Katie's saying that's maybe the most focus of what you're talking about, Commissioner Heck, which is development within local historic districts and alterations to landmarks is what the Landmarks Commission already approves. And so it's the development adjacent to a landmark where their recommendation is advisory to the UDC or the Plan Commission if it's reviewed.
That's okay. I see. Yeah, Landmarks does make those final decisions in
historic districts
in those situations. Okay, I get
it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Any questions related to item 12, which is the deep residential lots? Or are we ready to move to a motion on that item? Commissioner Solheim, thanks.
I'll move approval of Legistar 88735, zoning text amendment for deep residential backyard lots.
Thanks, Alderfield. Is that second? Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? We will, seeing none, we'll call a vote. Any?
I think Tim might be saying what I was just about to jump in for.
Go ahead.
Oh, then I'll let Megan say it as long as somebody says it. Megan, take it away.
Well, I think if I'm reading Tim's mind, we might just want to clarify that we're talking about the substitute. That was
thanks.
The substitute version. So that is the version that includes the recommendation to the depth of lots at 75 feet and the 15-foot front yard setback that was recommended by Housing Policy Committee.
Commissioner Solheim and Alderfield are confirming that that is their motion. Thank you for that clarification. With that clarification, is there any objection to unanimous approval for item 12? With the amended version. All right. Seeing none, we'll record that as approved. Thank you. All right, we'll move to item 13, which is Legistar 88736. And this is a substitute, item amending various tables within Chapter 28 of the Madison General Ordinances to permit two-family twin and two-unit buildings in all districts where single-family dwellings are also allowed. So I will open the public hearing on this item, as I understand we have registrants, although we
do.
Yeah.
The first registrant I don't see, but I'll read. Victor Wagner in District 14, registered in support and wishing to speak. No, I don't know if Jesse has seen Victor?
No. There's no person by that name that's been in attendance.
Okay. So our next registrant I do see is here now, Will Frederick in District 2, registered in support and wishing to speak.
All right, we have a 3-minute time limit, Will, and I'll try to interrupt briefly before if we get close to the limit, I'll try to give you a little advance notice, but welcome, and your microphone is live.
Hey there, my name is Will. I'm a 24-year-old living in Mansion Hill. And can you just remind me what agenda item this is? Because I was in support of 3 of them, so.
This is the second of the 3. This is the 2-family twin and 2-unit buildings change in the rules for single-family dwellings.
So this is agenda item 13.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So, I'm a 24-year-old. I would love to stay in Madison long term. Recently, I just faced a rent increase of 5%, and I was only able to achieve a salary increase of 3%. So I feel like the city is, just in the short time that I've lived here post-grad, already still struggling to meet the demands of housing in the city. And I think this initiative I support because I feel like it would increase density in single-family zoning areas that I think would allow us to build more housing and allow young people like myself who are working and who would want to stay here long-term, potentially raise a family. I think it would allow us to have greater mobility and economic freedom. And I think that it's one step in the process that deserves to go forward for the people who need it most, who are not economically advantaged in this city. And I just want to say that I have a ton of faith in the leadership that's now in the Common Council, especially with Will, who is now my alder, Will Ochowicz. So I wholeheartily trust that he will be tackling this issue, obviously in collaboration with the rest of the sponsors of this amendment. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Will. All right. Yeah, Megan.
We have a long list of additional registrants. Chang Wu, again, registered in support, available to answer questions. John Wynn, support and available to answer questions. And Blake Wasung, in support and available to answer questions. And there are approximately 16 additional speakers who have registered in support and not wishing to speak that will be attached to the record.
Thanks, Megan. Are there any questions from the commissioners for any of the registrants on item 13? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on that item and ask if the commissioners have questions for staff. All right. Alder Field, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask about a question or a comment that came in from a resident about PD zoning and the fact that this particular change doesn't apply to uses in PD zoning because those are custom. The comment suggested a couple of different paths that are not quite the same thing as this proposal. But I just wanted to ask if on the staff level there had been a discussion about whether there was an elegant mechanism to have a zoning change like this that is applicable in PD zoning, or some way to discern between the PD parcels that would be more appropriate for 2-family homes as opposed to the ones downtown that we looked at in the staff presentation.
I'll let Katie speak to this one, if she wants.
Yes, Alderfield, this is something we're definitely looking into because, we do think that a lot of these single family plan developments should have this opportunity for additional housing choices as well. And so that's something we're really actively looking at right now with the Office of the City Attorney of what that process look like. How do we do this? So stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have more information to come on a path to that.
Gotcha. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks. Alder Glenn. Thanks.
Yeah, I just have a question. I don't even know if it. Oh goodness, hold on. Let me shut my video off. For some reason, I'm freezing tonight. Question, and I don't know if this can be answered. With the twin homes in neighborhoods, and thinking along with what was just approved with 12, could 12 and 13, could the backyard lot be a duplex, and does it have to be? Can it be rental, or is that freed up for whoever's deciding to do it? Can it be rental or seller, to own? Can you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, totally understand your questions. Katie, do you want to take these, or do you want me to jump in here?
I'm sure I can start, and then feel free to jump in with additional details. Yes, the each lot, the front lot and the backyard lot, but could both have a duplex or 2-unit twin. The different ways our zoning code refers to these 2-unit buildings. That would be possible. The city is not able to regulate whether housing units are available for rent or ownership. That's across the board for single-family houses, apartments, all of it. So they could be renter units as well as homeownership opportunities, and they could go back and forth. One unit, one side, we've seen this in some cases where one side will be owned and then the other is rented out by that owner. So any of those configurations would be possible here.
Thanks. Other questions? Or are we ready to move to a motion on item 13? Alder Glenn.
I move to, hold on, let me get this back up. I move to approve the substitute amending various tables within Chapter 28 of the Madison General Ordinance to permit 2-family twin and 2-unit buildings in all districts where single-family dwellings are also allowed.
Thank you. Alder Yeager, that's a second. Thank you. Any additional discussion? Megan.
I should have mentioned what the substitute meant in this case. So
Yes.
Thank you for moving that with clarity. This substitute makes a technical correction. After this was originally introduced, the council adopted an ordinance that fixed a front yard setback issue that we had identified in one of the residential zoning districts. So we made a technical correction to this to make sure that that also made that change. Just to make sure we didn't undo the ordinance that we just adopted. So just a technical issue.
Thanks for that clarification. As such, any other discussion or comments on this item? Seeing none, we'll call it to a vote. Is there any objection to unanimous approval for item 13? All right, we will record that item as approved. And we'll move to item 14, Legistar 88737, amending sections in Chapter 28 of the Madison General Ordinances related to downtown and urban districts to allow more permitted uses within the districts. And is there a substitute on that? Megan, that's the same one? We're sticking with
the same one.
All right, thanks. So I will open the public hearing on item 14, and we can read our registrants as well.
Right. So our first speaker on this one is Will Frederick of District 2, registered in support and wishing to speak.
All right. Will, you're free to use your 3 minutes on item 14 if you'd like, or if you kind of already said what you needed to say, that's fine too. And we appreciate you participating in the meeting. All right, welcome.
All right. Thanks. Yeah, I think I would like to speak separately about this issue. Specifically, I'm happy that this has been proposed, and I support it because I see far too often the challenges I think Madison faces by those who, don't wish to see increased development or, have some qualms about, certain developments that they might be directly in their, space of living. And I think that the conditional use process, like from what I understand, I'm not that well versed in it, but it seems as if it makes it harder for the will of, people who will benefit most to be brought to like fruition. Seems like it makes it easy for the people who are the most upset about a specific development to have the loudest say. And I think that this change will allow us to more quickly increase housing density in the city. And again, allow people like myself, who's, a 24-year-old working person in this city, to continue to call Madison home and continue to call the city of Madison home. And I think I especially, out of the three that are here on the ballot today or on the docket today, 12, 13, and 14, I think this one seems the most powerful and transformative for increasing housing supply in the city. And I think, I'm just really excited that this is getting done and getting proposed. So I support. So, all right, that's all I got.
All right, thanks, Will.
Okay, again, we have Cheng Wu's registered in support, available to answer questions. Blake Wasong, registered in support, available to answer questions. And then 12 other registrants in support and not wishing to speak that will be attached to the record.
Great, thanks. Are there questions from the commission for any of the registrants on item 14? All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing on that item and ask if there are any additional questions for staff. We kind of talked about this one a little bit, so. All right, I think if there are not any other staff questions, I think we're looking for a motion on item 14. Commissioner Solheim, thank you.
I will move approval of Legistar 88737, zoning text amendment, amending downtown and urban district permitted use standards.
Thank you. Commissioner Heck, that's a second. Thank you. Any further discussion? Commissioner Heck?
Thanks. I would just ask that first I'll apologize to staff for not thinking of the landmark issue until this evening's meeting. But I think it might be helpful just to spend a little bit of time mapping that process out to make sure we understand that, so there isn't a hiccup with some other entity that's going to consider this. But I do support it. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Heck. Any other discussion? We'll call it to a vote. Is there any objection to unanimous approval for this item, for item 14? Seeing none, we'll record that as approved. Thank you. Thanks for all your work to the city staff on these amendments and the Housing First proposals. This is kind of all of the above strategy, and we're seeing it play out. So we appreciate the good presentations and engagement as well.
Thank you. And thanks for the good questions. I appreciate your comment, Commissioner Heck. I think asking for a map of these processes is a really good point. And certainly, I think how we explain what different processes items will move through either under our existing ordinances or as they change is a really good point. So thank you for that.
So we now have time for member announcements, communications, and business items. Does anyone have anything they would like to share? All right, seeing none, we'll move to the secretary's report. Megan, you have a lot of lines in tonight's meeting, so yeah.
Not as many lines as the last few upcoming matters lists, but yes, a lot of lines nonetheless. So a couple of notes for you for the July 28th meeting. Just will call your attention to the projects on Tulane Avenue and Williamson Street as items you may, if you'd like to look ahead at, probably items that will involve some discussion by the commission in 2 weeks. I wanted to flag that I will not be in attendance for the meeting on June 28th. I'm sorry, on July 28th. Kevin Furkow will attend in my place, along with one of the planners who will be able to walk you through all of the projects that are on that agenda. And then finally, I wanted to note that on the Common Council agenda for July 15th, we have Plan Commission appointments. Those were introduced at the meeting on July 1st, and they will be voted on next week. Hoping that as part of that approval, we'll be welcoming back Commissioner McCahill. She's not here right now, but Commissioner Bazine. And we will be saying goodbye to Commissioner Mendez. So wanted to say goodbye to him this evening and offer him an opportunity to say anything if he'd like. But thank you very much for your commitment to the Plan Commission over the last 4 years and service to the city in this capacity.
Sure. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. It was fun and I enjoyed serving. So thank you and good luck.
Thanks.
And that's all I have for this evening, Chair. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Megan. Any other questions for Megan on the staff report? And if not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn in a second. Alderfield. Thank you. And Commissioner Mendez, so we'll get your second to the last chance to second a motion to adjourn. So thank you. Any objection to unanimous approval for our motion to adjourn? And seeing none, we will stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.